cloudy, actually. Temperatures are likely to dip close to freezing, so a fairly cold, grey start to Tuesday. More granite skies for most places. A few breaks possible here and there. So again, northeast England, eastern Scotland, perhaps seeing a bit more in the way of sunshine. Any rain and drizzle petering out through the night across the far northwest, but then pepping up again through the afternoon. We'll see a bit more rain just trickling into the Highlands, the Northern Isles, come tomorrow afternoon. Elsewhere, again, dry and cloudy and cold sums it up. Temperatures even lower, only 3 or 4 in some spots. It's going to feel pretty chilly. Again, eastern Scotland could see the highest temperatures. A little bit of rain could trickle in here during Tuesday evening, and same goes for the central belt. Maybe just a little bit of light rain and drizzle during tomorrow evening, but otherwise, again, most places staying dry. Not much rain around this week, certainly not across England and Wales. There will be wet and windy spells across the far north, and although there'll be some sunny spells, generally fairly cloudy.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the briefing with me, Gloria De Piero. We've got a huge week coming up. It's crunch time for the Prime Minister with a Sue Gray report expected and allegations of Islamophobia in the Conservative Party prompting an inquiry. With all that, plus we're talking about compulsory jabs for NHS staff and asking how worried we should be about what's happening in the Ukraine. First, it's the news with Rosie.
Good afternoon, it's 12 o'clock. I'm Rosie Wright, here to get you up to date. The Prime Minister has asked the Cabinet to conduct an inquiry into allegations that an MP lost her job because of her faith. Nusrat Ghani claims she was sacked as a junior minister because of concerns about her Muslimness. Ms Ghani has welcomed the investigation but stressed the inquiry must include all that was said in Downing Street and by the whip. Well, solicitor and human rights activist Rashada Hamid says it's the bare minimum the Prime Minister should be doing.
Not only should Islamophobia and racial discrimination be rooted out from the Conservative Party if these allegations are true, it will also hold their credibility at stake. And they must demonstrate a zero tolerance for discrimination and prove that religious minorities are respected regardless of their faith.
The Prime Minister is braced for the publication of Sue Gray's report into allegations of Downing Street parties during lockdown. Well, the Education Secretary Nadhim Zahawi says the findings that are expected to be released this week will be completely open to the public. Boris Johnson has pledged to face scrutiny in Parliament.
He's human. He makes mistakes. He made a mistake on this issue, and he came to Parliament and actually said, sorry, but we've had the apology, we now need the detail, which is why the Sue Gray investigation is important. She will make her findings completely public, and that's the right thing, and the Prime Minister has then absolutely pledged to come to Parliament, make a statement and be scrutinised on those findings.
Labour Party Chair Annalise Dodds told GB News she's concerned the internal probe won't be completely transparent.
The Prime Minister himself could have set the record straight without needing even this internal probe if he just said what he did and where he was. I think most people watching this don't need a huge investigation in order to reveal what they were doing during that first lockdown. They can remember themselves, and quite frankly, I'm sure the Prime Minister can as well.
Well, speaking to us earlier, the Education Secretary says he still supports the national insurance tax hike that's due to come into force from April. Well, it's after the Daily Mail reported that the entire Cabinet would back a delay. Nadeem Zahawi says the money from the 1.25% tax rise is needed to support Britain's social care system. Danny Boxall from the Taxpayers Alliance says people are facing a double-edged sword coming out of the other end of COVID.
Going to have a sort of long-term impact of this where growth is going to be slowed down. We're going to see less employment. People's wages are more likely to stagnate, which with a frozen income tax is going to be a sort of double whammy on people, facing quite a difficult time coming out of the pandemic as well. Not forgetting that a lot of people's incomes were squeezed then as well.
The Foreign Office says some British staff and their dependents are being withdrawn from the embassy in Ukraine in response to the growing threat from Russia. It comes after the US ordered the families of American staff at the US embassy to leave the country. Russia has currently amassed over 100,000 troops at its border with Ukraine, but denies it's planning an invasion. The UK High Court has ruled that Julian Assange can appeal against the decision to extradite him to the United States. The WikiLeaks founder is wanted in America over alleged conspiracy following the publication of hundreds of thousands of leaked documents relating to the Afghanistan and Iraq wars. Speaking outside the High Court, his partner, Stella Morris, says the decision is still a long way from justice.
The situation now is that the Supreme Court has to decide whether it will hear the appeal. But make no mistake, we won today in court. As long as this case isn't dropped, as long as Julian isn't freed, Julian continues to suffer.
The Liverpool taxi bomber Ahmed al-Swiman's asylum claim was rejected 6 years before his attack. Newly obtained court documents show the Iraqi-born also falsely claimed to be of Syrian heritage in his applications. He died when his homemade bomb detonated in a taxi outside of Liverpool Women's Hospital last November. John Lewis has told staff they'll get full sick pay regardless of their COVID vaccination status. The executive director, Andrew Murphy, says the company casts no judgment and that it wouldn't be right to create a link between staff members' vaccine choice and the pay they receive. Other retailers like Next have reduced its sick pay for unvaccinated staff. Morrisons and IKEA have introduced similar policies. The French fashion designer Thierry Mugler has died aged 73. He was known for his daring designs featuring broad shoulders and plunging necklines in the 1980s. Well, the likes of Beyoncé, Lady Gaga and David Bowie all wore his clothes. A statement on his official Facebook page yesterday confirmed that he died. This is GB News. You're now up to date. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now, the briefing with Gloria.
Coming up this hour on The Briefing, it's another tough week for the government with allegations of blackmail and Islamophobia, and Sue Gray, the senior civil servant, finally expected to report on Partygate. We'll have the latest. And with 100,000 Russian troops on the border with Ukraine, how worried should we be? I'll be asking Conservative MP Henry Smith, who's just got back from there. Conservative MP Nusrat Ghani says she lost her job as a minister over concerns about her Muslimness. I'm talking with Labour MP Rupa Huq about what it's like to be a female Muslim MP. And the mother of a 5-year-old boy claims emissions from her local landfill site is harming his health. I'll be talking to her and her local MP. Plus, of course, we've got a response from the Quarry. The public have secured a debate this afternoon in Parliament calling for the axing of compulsory jabs for NHS workers in England. They must have received their first jab by February the 3rd. People could start to lose their jobs as soon as next week. Seems set to make the staffing crisis in our health service even worse. Joining me now is Henry Smith, Conservative MP for Crawley, who voted against mandatory vaccines for NHS workers. Henry, always good to see you on the show. Thank you for your time today.
Good afternoon, Gloria. Good to see you.
You voted against this measure for compulsory vaccines. The government don't sound like they're going to change their view. How will MPs like you get them to change their mind?
Well, I think we need to try and use persuasive arguments that, first of all, I think there is a moral imperative here that forcing people to receive a vaccine that they don't want to is something that I think we should be rejecting as a country, but also the very practical reason that we are often told that we have the NHS under pressure, that there are staff shortages, and if then up to potentially 70,000 people lose their jobs because they haven't had a COVID-19 vaccination, that will make not only treatment of COVID much more difficult in the NHS, but that backlog of other conditions that has been caused because of the pandemic. Don't get me wrong, I am in favour of vaccination. I've been triply vaccinated myself. I encourage my constituents and all those who work in the NHS and across our economy to get vaccinated. There is a point of principle here about people having a right to refuse a medical procedure.
Thank you very much. Very clear on that. If I may ask you about the current woes, I don't think, as far as I can tell from looking online, that you are one of the Conservative MPs who have submitted a letter of no confidence in the Prime Minister. You're sticking by the Prime Minister.
I haven't submitted a letter of no confidence. Let's see what Sue Gray's report into what went on at Downing Street during the pandemic says. You mentioned in your opening titles that I've just come back from Ukraine. It was actually really quite bizarre looking back from Kiev and the front line with Russia in Ukraine, where I was last week at Westminster Politics. We really did seem incredibly self-indulgent. There are existential threats to the country of Ukraine even existing in a few weeks' time in any real sense. And here we are obsessed now for a month about Downing Street parties. It's right that those are investigated. If there was wrongdoing, those who were responsible for that need to be accountable. But we really do need to get back to some of the pressing issues that are facing this country and the world, not only Russian and Chinese aggression, but also the cost of living issues that I think are coming down the track, and also celebrating some of the successes we've had, a Brexit agreement, a successful COP26 summit, the number of jobs available greater than before the COVID pandemic. So, I do think we need to sort of reconcentrate on what is important for people's day-to-day lives.
Some people might argue that putting people's taxes up in April via that national insurance rise is part of the problem.
Well, I didn't vote for that either. I don't think increasing national insurance is the right thing to do, and I hope the government will think again about that. So whilst, I do back Boris Johnson remaining as Prime Minister, I'm not shy in telling the government when I think they have got things wrong, and it's time to refocus on the real priorities, I think, for the British people, and that is, in large part, I think, cost of living.
Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab has said that there is a very significant risk of a Russian invasion of Ukraine. You have just come back from there. What's your take? Do you agree?
Well, I met with senior government officials in Kiev, the capital, and then travelled by train. It was a 9-hour journey to the Russian front line, and went within a few hundred feet of that, what they call that line of contact with Russian separatist forces. And I have to say, it was actually remarkably calm. I hope that means it wasn't too calm. But then again, they have been living with this situation for over 7 years now, with quite a significant part of Ukrainians' south and eastern territory having effectively been annexed by pro-Russian forces. So, my hope is that this can be resolved and that we don't have conflict, of course, but it's right, I think, that we are showing a very strong response to Russia, that this sort of aggression goes against what is internationally accepted. And I'm very proud, and the Ukrainians are very grateful for the British support that we are giving them. I also think, though, we need to understand Russia's psyche. Just over 3 decades ago, they were humiliated effectively with the breakup of the Soviet Union and a loss of a lot of their influence. We see this year Putin's 70th birthday. It's also the 100th anniversary of the founding of the Soviet Union. So I think we need to understand that the Russian psyche is that they feel that they want to become a superpower once again. And whilst we need to respect and understand that, we cannot accept them seeking to effectively remove sovereignty from their neighbours.
What might we do in response?
Well, I think we've done an awful lot already in terms of providing some artillery equipment to the front line and training, specialist training to Ukrainian forces. I think we've been very strong in terms of our announcement of sanctions and further sanctions should Russia go against, as I say, international expectations of how we conduct ourselves and not invading neighbours. And I would like to see greater unity from other European countries as well. I think noticeably by their absence has been Germany and France on this. And that, I'm afraid, is just a green light to Russia. And actually shows, I think, the folly of countries like Germany being overly reliant on Russian energy supplies.
Final question. I'm going to return to the domestic, if I may, and what's happening in your party. Your colleague, Julian Assange MP, claims that some MPs were being blackmailed into supporting the Prime Minister. He said whips had threatened to withdraw funding from MPs' constituencies if they did not back Boris Johnson. Are you aware of tactics like this going on?
I have to say I'm not, Gloria, and you're obviously a former MP yourself. You know how the whips operation looks like. And of course, they let you know if they are disappointed with you for not backing the government, and they try to apply pressure to have you back the government in key votes. But I have never once been threatened, either personally or in terms of your constituency won't get funding as a result. So I do question those reports. I think that the whips have operated in time immemorial in that kind of way of trying to put pressure. I have to say, as far as my own personal whip's concerned, he is ultra nice to me, and I always feel incredibly bad when I vote against the government because I feel like I'm letting him down. So that's not my experience.
It doesn't stop you, though. But it's
it
always...
doesn't stop me, no, that probably says more about me than him.
It is always a pleasure to have you on the show, Henry Smith, Conservative MP for Crawley. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, yesterday, Conservative MP Nusrat Ghani claimed she was sacked from her job as a minister over concerns about her Muslimness. Coming up next, I'm asking Labour MP Rupa Huq how hard it is to be a female Muslim MP. Before that, it's time for your weather.
Hello again. A fairly grey Monday for the vast majority, but not much rain around. Most places dry as they will be for most of this week. Still feeling fairly cold, especially across England and Wales. We've had high pressure in control, slipping away a little to the east, and there is a weak weather front draped across northern Scotland that will provide some rain and drizzle, chiefly over the Highlands today, and that'll continue on and off across the Western Isles as well. But elsewhere, it is largely dry. Some breaks in the cloud, northeast England, eastern Scotland, and maybe at times across Shetland. Could be a few showers here, though, but elsewhere it's generally dry and cloudy, and it does feel quite cold. 4 or 5 for most towns and cities across England and Wales. Highest temperature probably, if you see a bit of brightness across eastern Scotland, Aberdeenshire could get to 10 or maybe 11. Across to the west, though, there'll still be some drizzly conditions persisting into the evening over the Highlands and the Western Isles, but otherwise it's a dry night. Again, some breaks here and there, which could allow a few pockets of frost. And even when it's cloudy, actually, temperatures are likely to dip close to freezing. So a fairly cold, grey start to Tuesday, more granite skies for most places. A few breaks possible here and there. So again, northeast England, eastern Scotland, perhaps seeing a bit more in the way of sunshine. Any rain and drizzle petering out through the night across the far northwest, but then pepping up again through the afternoon. We'll see a bit more rain just trickling into the Highlands, the Northern Isles come tomorrow afternoon. Elsewhere, again, dry and cloudy and cold sums it up. Temperatures even lower, only 3 or 4 in some spots. It's going to feel pretty chilly. Again, eastern Scotland could see the highest temperatures. A little bit of rain could trickle in here during Tuesday evening, and same goes for the central belt. Maybe just a little bit of light rain and drizzle during tomorrow evening, but otherwise, again, most places staying dry. Not much rain around this week, certainly not across England and Wales. There will be wet and windy spells across the far north, and although there'll be some sunny spells, generally fairly cloudy.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world. If
you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Now, the Prime Minister Boris Johnson has ordered an inquiry in response to Conservative MP Nusrat Ghani's claim that she was sacked from her ministerial role due to concerns about her Muslimness. Joining me in the studio is Rupa Huq, Labour MP for Ealing Central and Acton. Rupa, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Do you know Nusrat Ghani?
I do, actually. We're the same age. We got in at the same time. And I think in those early days, we were on a few training courses together. I remember being on one you did, actually, Gloria, for new MPs. But anyway, yeah, we know the same part of West London. I think in the week she's in my seat in West London. And in fact, just a couple of weeks ago, we were working together on something cross-party. So, yeah, she's a decent person. I do know her.
Have you been in touch with her since her remarks?
Do you know, I texted her yesterday and said, I bet your phone's off the hook, with people saying the same, but massive solidarity and thank you for speaking out. Because I think these kind of things are often buttoned up and, you know, bottled up and all this. So massive courage it must have taken, yeah.
Do you think Parliament is a welcoming place for Muslim MPs in your experience?
I mean, look, I think Parliament, it's been there a long time. That original arch you walk through in Westminster Hall has been there since the year 1090. That's a jolly long time. So it can feel a bit of an unfriendly place to anyone who's a bit different. You know, I've heard Labour Northern MPs, was it Hazel Blears or someone saying that, you know, they can be a bit condescending to people whose face doesn't quite fit. Certainly, I found there are certain places in it. I mean, it's a weird building, you know it. But when you go there are whole staircases and lifts and corridors that are for MPs only, members only. I found myself straying into bits of that. The House of Commons terrace, for example, and being told by security, hey, where do you think you're going? And I like to think that was kind of when I was newer and people know who I am now. But, you know, my colleague Dawn Butler, I think she was once in a lift.
A black MP?
Yeah, Brent MP neighbouring with sort of braided hair, and a Tory male MP said to her, "This lift isn't for cleaners, you know." So that kind of reaction can happen. I mean, again, this is quite a few years ago. I'd like to think it's lessening, and the way for it to lessen is to have more Muslim people, black people, northern people, whatever, that are a bit from outside the box of grey-haired man in grey suit.
What would you say to those of Muslim faith who have been reading the reports from Nusrat Ghani, who were thinking about entering politics and who think, oh my goodness, maybe it's not for me? Can you reassure them that politics is?
And I'd say don't be deterred. You know, if you're from all these things that I've said are slightly minority categories, you've probably had to fight that bit harder for everything in life. And it's never going to change. We want a parliament that reflects our society. So if it is same old, and it replicates and people get chosen at selection meetings because, oh, you remind me of me when I was your age, it's not good because it's never going to change. So I'd say, you know, do it. It should make them want to be even more determined to sort of smash those stereotypes.
Office investigation into Nusrat Ghani's claims that she was fired from being a government minister partly because of her Muslimness. So the Prime Minister is acting on this. You must welcome that.
Yeah, I mean, it's another massive U-turn. How many have they done? I mean, we're losing count, aren't we? The NI rise, the triple lock, So, you know, as recently as yesterday, they were sending MPs out on the media to pretty much victim blame and say this is just excuses for someone who's not very good.
Some of the Cabinet, to be fair. I mean, the Conservative Party have got some very, very senior
it is vocal people from within, people like Nadim Zahawi.
Sajid Javid spoke out on Twitter.
Exactly, who said solidarity with Nuz, that they've done this U-turn. Because initially they were saying sort it out within the internal party structures, it's your fault, you didn't. So that is progress, but we need to see what this is exactly. We need to see the T's and C's.
Now, some members of Parliament, including yourself, received anti-Muslim letters in the post. That was back in 2018. Just tell us a bit about those letters and how the parliamentary authorities dealt with that.
Yeah, so at the time, there was a thing going around on social media, an A4 page, and it was called Kill a Muslim Day. And I think there was a nominated day in 2018, March, I think it was. And there was an urgent question in Parliament on this because they'd been going through letterboxes in, I think, the Midlands and North. I didn't see one come through my door. I think it was not a London phenomenon. But it had a tariff of different things. And it said spit in the face of one, 10 points, burn someone's house down, 100 points, nuke Mecca, you're the winner. And it was inciting people to do these things. It was called Kill a Muslim Day. And I think killing one, you got a number of points. And it was just outrageous. It was an anonymous letter, and 5 Muslim MPs received them at their parliamentary offices. So I was in my select committee, far away from my office, and the person whose job it was to open the post every day found that it was that letter, but it was also oozing with a weird substance. And this was the time of Novichok and Salisbury, so nobody was taking any chances. The Parliamentary Security Services came round. Then suddenly, before you know it, that whole wing of the building was cordoned off, everyone was evacuated out, blokes in hazmat suits, pre-COVID, so that was more of a rare sight, seeing people in all the high-vis stuff, doing a sweep of the whole building, and the guy who touched it had to go to hospital. I mean, I think it was seen as being a non-noxious substance. I don't know what it was. It was
just very, very alarming. Now, I put it to you that no party is clean in matters of racism. The Labour Party faced terrible accusations of anti-Semitism from many Jewish members. No party's got a clean slate on this.
I mean, it was a very dark period of Labour's history that, you know, people were not able to go to Labour Party meetings and say, you know, I often say, as a woman, as a Muslim, as a this, as a that, as an Asian, it's completely wrong, and kids on university campuses felt intimidated. We are dealing with that. There was full cooperation with the AHRC inquiry. I think the Conservatives need to have one as well, because, again, there's a lot of... They were always very keen to point fingers, rightly, at our problems, and we are getting our house in order now. But there's, you know, a whole report from last year on Islamophobia. They didn't even mention the word Islamophobia. I think they called it anti-Muslim hate, that they've not dealt with. So it's absolutely right. It's a proper inquiry now, because I think they were saying it should be an internal Conservative process. And one of the findings of their report was that their internal process is stuffed. So let's see what happens. But I like to think Labour, under Keir Starmer's leadership, he's made that his top priority. We're sorting it out. They need to next.
Rupa Huq, Labour MP, thank you very much for coming in the studio today. Nice to see you. Now, the Prime Minister has had so many bad weeks lately, but this one could be crunch time with Sue Gray's Partygate report expected and allegations of blackmail and Islamophobia making matters even worse. Well, here with me, or the very latest from Number 10, is Tom Howard, GB News' politics correspondent. Hi there, Tom. Good to see you. How bad is it in the behind the door behind you?
Well, it must be very annoying for the Prime Minister right now, because I can tell you that a protester has turned up at the end of Downing Street in the last couple of minutes and is blasting out a surprisingly tuneful rendition of Bye Bye Boris, Boris, Bye Bye. A surprising parody song there, but it really does punctuate what is going to be a turbulent week for the Prime Minister. Of course, we're expecting Sue Gray's report potentially towards the end of this week, although Sue Gray is only interviewing Dominic Cummings today, we hear. So how long it takes to compile all of his evidence, as well as everyone else she's spoken to, whether it's the police around Downing Street or indeed those special advisors, civil service members and indeed ministers as well. It's really going to be an enormous piece of work, and how quickly this can all be put together is an open question, but the consequences of the report will be seismic. We know for a fact that many Conservative MPs are itching to place in a letter to the office of Sir Graham Brady, but do not want to do so until they have seen the report. Potentially what happened last week with the defection of Christian Wakeford to the Labour Party is that time was bought. Time, but not potentially a different outcome. This is what this week is all about. Will the Prime Minister be able to move on the conversation? Prime Minister's questions, of course, on Wednesday. Will we hear this endless repeating of the same phrases and questions that we've heard for the last 2.5 weeks now on this very same story? Or will the Prime Minister be able to point to what's going on with the potential successes of the government, how strong the UK is being on Russia, how prepared it was for Omicron with that booster rollout that was quite a success? Will he be able to move the conversation on? That is a big question. Of course, we're expecting the Levelling Up white paper as well. Probably not this week, probably a little bit down the line, but there's much to do in government, and yet the big distraction remains. This is the story, this story of Partygate that continues to distract from the agenda of this government. Could it bring Boris down? Could it even bring those letters in this week? That remains to be seen.
Tom Howard from Number 10, thank you as ever. After the break, we will have our weekly feature, Constituency Surgery, joined by Aaron Bell, Conservative MP, and Rebecca Curry, his constituent. First, it's the news with Rosie Wright.
Good afternoon, it's 12:30. Let's get you up to date. The Prime Minister is warning that Russia invading Ukraine would be a disastrous step and would be a painful, violent and bloody business. The Foreign Office says some British staff and their dependents are being withdrawn from the embassy in Ukraine in response to the growing threat from Russia. The US has also ordered the families of American staff at their embassy to leave the country. Russia has currently amassed over 100,000 troops at its border, but denies claims it's planning to invade Ukraine. Boris Johnson has asked the Cabinet to conduct an inquiry into allegations that an MP lost her job because of her faith. Nusrat Ghani claims she was sacked as a junior minister because of concerns about her Muslimness. She's welcomed the investigation but stressed the inquiry must include all that was said in Downing Street and by the whip. Well, meanwhile, the Prime Minister's braced for the publication of Sue Gray's report into allegations of Downing Street parties during lockdown. We're expecting that report to be released this week. The UK High Court has ruled that Julian Assange can appeal against the decision to extradite him to the United States. The WikiLeaks founder is wanted in America over alleged conspiracy following the publication of hundreds of thousands of leaked documents relating to Afghanistan and the Iraq wars. The Alliance of British Drivers say changes to the highway code are dangerous and there's a lack of plans to notify road users about them. Cyclists will be encouraged to ride in the middle of the road and drivers will have more responsibility to watch out for cyclists and pedestrians. Pending parliamentary approval, the new advice will come into effect this Saturday. You are now up to date here on GB News. We're on your TV, online and DAB Plus radio. After a short break, we'll be back to the briefing with Gloria.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
So, could this be the week when Graham Brady gets the 54th letter of no confidence in the Prime Minister and a vote is triggered? Yesterday, Aaron Bell, MP for Newcastle and Lyme, is reported to have submitted his letter, and I'm delighted that he joins me in the studio now. Are the reports true?
Look, I've said the same to the Sunday Times. I said to my constituents that I believe it's an internal confidential process within the parliamentary party. It's like that for a reason. It's no secret I've been unhappy about aspects of a number 10 operation. You know, I was a Boris Johnson supporter. I voted Leave. I voted for him in the leadership election. And I'm a big supporter of the government's agenda, levelling up, the 35 million that's coming to Newcastle under Lyme. But I've got serious concerns about what's been going on at number 10 Downing Street, the sort of lax attitude to these sorts of things. And obviously the Prime Minister's role in that is open for question, and that's what Sue Gray is going to report on. So I'm waiting to see what she says. But I have been very unhappy about some of the things coming out of number 10. And of course, I rebelled on Owen Paterson as well. I was incredibly unhappy about that.
So much focus is on the Sue Gray, the Senior Civil Servants report, which we expect later this week. But help me understand, what could she say that would make it all okay? Because we all know the past.
Well, I mean, I do think it's a little bit unfair that so much is being, I don't know Sue Gray at all, but so much is being loaded onto one civil servant. And I don't expect her to come out and say, you know, the Prime Minister should resign or the Prime Minister shouldn't resign. I expect her to put out the facts of what happened at these events. And I've heard explanations from, you know, whips from the Prime Minister himself about, you know, their account of this sort of thing. And so I think really just having the facts out there will enable people to make a final decision. I think a lot of people have come to their own conclusions based on what people have said so far, but a proper account of the facts, I think, is a fair process to go through, and that's what I'm waiting for.
Now, your colleague William Ragg has claimed that some MPs were being blackmailed into supporting the Prime Minister. He said whips had threatened to withdraw funding from MPs' constituencies if they did not back Boris Johnson. Is that something you're familiar with?
No. I mean, I've had no threats made to me either personally or about funding. As I said, Newcastle under Lyme has had nearly £35 million through the Future High Streets funding and the Town Deal funding. That's going to transform our town centre. It's going to transform some of the most deprived wards in my constituency. And I'm, obviously I'm very glad to have got that. I went and lobbied for it with the department. It's now called Levelling Up Department. So I've never had any of that. When I rebelled on Owen Paterson, there was almost no pressure put on me at all. The whips asked me, can you support this? And I said, I can't. And they just said, well, OK then. So I've never had that kind of pressure at all. Obviously, I'm not doubting what William said. William's a very valued colleague. He's on the procedure committee with me. And I think he's standing up for people that he believes have had that experience. But it's not been my experience.
OK, clear enough. Finally, I know you don't have a crystal ball. 54 letters. Do you reckon? Is it going to happen?
I've got no idea where we are with this at the moment. I mean, speaking to colleagues, I've got a good feel for my own intake, if you like, the 2019 MPs, but I've no idea what senior MPs are doing. There are obviously people on the backbenches who used to be cabinet ministers and are no longer cabinet ministers. They weren't happy. They might have backed Jeremy Hunt in the first place. But whether those people have put their letters in, whether they're waiting for Sue Gray, I don't know. It could happen this week. Obviously, it could happen. I think I think we must be somewhere 30 to 40 maybe or so at the moment. So it very much depends on how this report lands and how the Prime Minister responds to that report and in the statement he's promised to make.
The reason that you are here today is because we do a weekly constituency surgery. And right now, we are just trying to make sure that we can get the link up to the constituent, because the reason why we do these is because they are examples of a constituent and an MP working together on a campaign. They are going to tell me in my ear as soon as we have Rebecca. But let me start by asking you how you met Rebecca.
Well, we've got a major problem in Newcastle under Lyme. We have the smelliest landfill in the whole country, but since records began, it's called Wally's Quarry. You're a former MP. You know that sometimes landfills go bad. You get an effect that might affect a ward or something like this. This has been affecting pretty much my entire constituency. At times, the odour has been reaching 3-4 miles across the constituency, and at its peak last sort of February, March. I went out and it was absolutely appalling. It was making me I drove in. As soon as I got out of my car, I was gagging. That's how bad it was at its peak. And unfortunately, with the cold weather we've had recently, it's been getting back up to those levels again. Now, the Environment Agency have got 10 monitoring stations in the whole country, and we've got 4 of them ringed around Wally's Quarry. I think that tells you the level of severity that we have here. And I, as an MP, have been trying to represent my constituents and try and get this problem sorted, trying to put pressure on the Environment Agency, pressure on the operator. And this particular case with Rebecca is one of the most difficult ones I've had, in that her son, who's called Matthew, has got pre-existing respiratory conditions which are being made much worse by the landfill fumes. And she has very bravely got independent doctors to investigate this, explain the situation, and taken the Environment Agency to court, the High Court, where she won, and then she lost on the Court of Appeal, and now they're looking at going to the Supreme Court. Her story and others like it. I've had constituents with mental health problems which have been exacerbated by this. It's fundamental to being an MP that you go and stand up for your constituents when they're suffering.
And I want to, because you've raised this in Parliament a number of times, I want to ask you about the impact of that. But before I do, I just want to say, in the interest of transparency, that my husband has provided media advice to the company involved, although, of course, we haven't discussed the substance of this issue. So what has been the result when you have raised this in Parliament, and you've done so many times? Yes,
it was pretty much the first thing I did when I got it. The problem has always been there, and it was the first debate I secured in Parliament. I secured a debate in Westminster Hall back in 2020 to raise the issue before the Waste Minister. But then as the problem got a lot worse in the winter of 2020 to 2021, I was writing letters to everybody, the Environment Agency, to George Eustace, and saying we need to have some professional scientific monitoring here because this problem is getting worse. Eventually, I secured that monitoring despite the Environment Agency initially refusing. I think they've been a little bit slow and complacent throughout. It's through pressure that I'm putting on that we've been able to get there.
And the spokesperson for Wally's Quarry told GBNews that emissions from Wally's Quarry landfill fall well within the regulatory limits.
Well, they don't. There's different limits. There's limits for human health, and then there's limits for odour. And in the recent weeks, residents living on the Gallingale estate last week were subject to above the odour guidelines for over 50% of the time. They were suffering from landfill gas on the Gallingale View estate, which is where one of the monitoring stations is, over 50% of the time was at a level that's going to cause inconvenience and annoyance. And obviously it's more than just inconvenience and annoyance if you've got pre-existing conditions, like my constituent Matthew Richards, like people who've got mental health conditions. It's really contributing to people's stress and anxiety.
I want to bring Becky in now, who joins us on the phone. Becky, hi and welcome to the show.
Hiya.
Just your family live half a mile away from the landfill site. Can you tell us what it's like?
It's absolutely horrific. You know, the coughing, spluttering, choking. You know, it's a daily thing. You can't open your doors, you can't open your windows. It's like living in a gas chamber, really.
And this, as your MP said, it's ended up with the Environment Agency in the courts. Just explain the impact, because they first case sided with you guys. The second sided with the Environment Agency. How do things like that make you feel?
It angers me, really, because, you know, at the end of the day, they're a government body. They should be protecting people, not fighting against us. You know, they should be helping us and get all these admissions gone.
Aaron, I'll come back to you, Rebecca. We're really pleased that you are with us. The company say that they have ongoing construction of a new shell protective coating that covers the landfill sites, prevents emissions. Basically, their point is that they're acting.
Well, they're acting under direction from the Environment Agency, again, through the pressure that I put on. There have been new gas wells drilled into the landfill. There's been this posi shell capping put on, and they're now capturing about twice as much gas as they were early in the year. But the problem is the stink's still there. And then, of course, on top of that, we've now got the Environment Agency announced shortly before Christmas they're conducting a criminal investigation into Wally's Quarry Limited. And obviously I can't prejudice that, and I don't know what's going to happen there. But it does worry me that we don't know what necessarily has gone into the landfill in the past.
Rebecca, what made you decide to get in touch with your Member of Parliament? Have you done so before?
I emailed Aaron, yes. I haven't got in touch with him before in the past, no, but I emailed him and just explained that my little boy had been diagnosed with toxic fumes.
How is your little boy?
He's not well at all. You know, he's an ailer since Christmas. He's an ailer. He's been using it lots and lots.
Would you recommend, Becky, part of the reason we do this is because we want to show the different sides to what MPs do in their work. Did you ever think you were the sort of person that would get in touch with their Member of Parliament?
No, never. You know, I've never had a reason to, and I never thought I would have to.
Where next for the campaign, Aaron?
Well, so, I mean, firstly, to pay tribute to everything Becky's done, her brother, Tom, has also been a huge part of the Stop the Stink campaign that's been going on locally. I'm going to keep putting pressure on the Environment Agency, the operator. I'm going to try and secure further debates in Parliament. I've spoken underprivileged in Parliament a few times about what's going on there. We won't repeat that on air for obvious reasons. We need to get a resolution to this soon. We need to find out where that criminal investigation is going.
Sorry, I'm not aware of this criminal investigation that you refer to.
So sorry, the Environment Agency announced before Christmas that they were investigating allegations of potential criminal activity at sites.
So there's not a criminal investigation, it's an allegation.
Well, they've formally launched an investigation. Just to be clear.
Fine. We will have a quote from the Environment Agency coming up. This may end up in the Supreme Court. That's yours and Rebecca's net. In fact, let me talk to Rebecca. Rebecca, it's your lawyers that want to pursue this in the Supreme Court. That's right, I understand.
Yeah, the papers went in on Friday to the Supreme Court.
And do you have an idea of a timescale? Because it must be, it's a very big thing to do. It must bring with it stresses and strains.
All I know is it's gone in as a matter of urgency. So we're hoping not wait too long.
I mean, the Supreme Court case, as we're not lawyers as MPs, we can't give constituents legal advice, and Rebecca's had very, very good legal advice throughout. And, the first judgment was, a real David versus Goliath moment, I thought, because it's the first time that a judge has found that people's human rights can be affected and that the regulators can be failing on that. The regulator obviously appealed because that would change the underpinning of our regulation completely. So it's now turning on points of law, and I'm not a lawyer, but that's exactly why I hope it does go to the Supreme Court. I don't know if the Supreme Court have said they'll hear it or not yet. But putting all the court case aside, the fundamental problem here is to stop the stink. And the way we do that is through the Environment Agency doing their job and through the operator cleaning up their act and cleaning up their site.
Aaron Bell, thank you for coming in today to talk to us about your campaign. Thank you to Rebecca for bringing us the personal testimony that you brought. Now, a spokesperson for the Environment Agency said that Wally's Quarry is responsible for the emissions. They added that the Environment Agency has required and continues to require Wally's Quarry Limited to make substantial changes to the way in which it operates. The Environment Agency remains determined to tackle the problems at Wally's Quarry. A spokesperson for Wally's Quarry told us that it is clear from a full and independent survey recently carried out that emissions from the Wally Quarry's limited landfill fall well within the regulatory limits of those expected at such sites. Wally's Quarry says this independent survey was requested by the Environment Agency. It is now with the Environment Agency, although we note it is not chosen to publicise its comments. The statement goes on. Equally, Wally's Quarry Limited has never received or disposed of hazardous waste in contravention of any regulations. Any such allegations or implications, however framed, are baseless and wrong. In the light of all the evidence, the company says Wally's Quarry Limited is fully confident in its position relating to legal actions in which it finds itself involved. This includes the action brought against the Environment Agency by Ms Curry in the sad case of her son, Matthew. We have every sympathy with the health issues the family are facing, but there is no evidence to suggest that the operations of the landfill are in any way linked to his condition. Thank you for bearing with us. It's important to reflect all sides of this argument, but we are very grateful to you, Aaron Bell, Conservative MP for Newcastle and Lyme, for coming in to talk to us about your campaign. Thank you. In the past few minutes, the Prime Minister has been speaking about the row over claims of Islamophobia in the Conservative Party.
We take these allegations extremely seriously. I took them very seriously when they were raised with me 18 months ago. Very glad there's an investigation taking place now. I can't say more really about it, but what I can say is I'm here in Milton Keynes University Hospital focusing on what I think is one of the biggest issues facing the country and something that people really want us to fix, and that is how we come out of COVID, not just with our economy open, more open than any other society economy in Europe, but how we deal now with the COVID backlogs.
Back on this directly, do you believe that Mark Spencer can stay in his job while this investigation is going on?
I think really, we just get back to the key point, that this is something I take personally extremely seriously. I took it very seriously 18 months ago. We must wait and see what the investigation produces.
And while the country is waiting to see if 54 letters will be sent to Graham Brady's office from Conservative MPs to trigger a no-confidence motion in the Prime Minister, some members of the public have decided to send their own. Joining me now is Ellie Gellard, Strategic Director at 38 Degrees. Ellie, good to see you. Let's start by asking you to tell us about the campaign group that you're director of, if you would, briefly.
Hi, Gloria. Thanks for having us. So 38 Degrees is a community of millions of people across the country who take actions every day on issues that they care about and that matter to their own lives. They vote for all political parties and none. And the one thing that they really can agree on is that the democracy that we have in this country works better when more of us are involved. And so the approach that we've taken with the current situation has been informed by the fact that our democracy is in crisis. 2 in 10 people in this country have confidence that the government is being honest right now. That is a crisis, and it's in all of our interest to try and address it. So, as you heard from Aaron Bell earlier, the process around this rule breaking and how those in power are held to account is really secretive right now. And we think it's really important that the voices of people who feel betrayed and lacking in trust in how the government are handling these accusations feel heard.
So you've made the public aware that they can write to Graham Brady too. Is it fair in the sense that only Tory MPs can actually trigger a contest?
Absolutely. So obviously the formal process involves 54 Conservative MPs writing their letters in secret to Graham Brady, the chair of the 1922 committee. And that is the formal process. But as part of the process, and because the rule breaking was so public and the extent of public anger and betrayal is so great, we thought that the public's voices needed to be heard as part of that process. So we invited people who had experiences of lockdown, their own personal experiences that they felt were important to share, to do the same and write their own letters to Sir Graham Brady.
And what sort of letters have you seen? Do you get to see them?
So quite a few people who handwrote these letters took time out of their busy lives to do so, as you can see on the screen now, have shared them with us and were willing to share them with us. And we've seen people who, as I say, vote for all parties and none, some lifelong Conservative voters who just feel ultimately betrayed and felt like they wanted to share their story. So Caroline, for example, shared a heart-wrenching tale. Her mother had her last year of life in lockdown. She stuck by the rules to keep our NHS safe and to protect our NHS like she was asked to do. And Caroline, having then seen these allegations of parties in Downing Street, went back and looked at her mother's diary from the time and saw the impact that lockdown had on her mother, not being able to, as she quoted in her diary, every reason to live was kind of removed from her life. And that is just heartbreaking to imagine someone like Caroline seeing those headlines, understanding what her mother went through.
It absolutely is heartbreaking, but wouldn't it have been fairer to send such letters to Number 10? Is it fair on Graham Brady to get these letters? He didn't set lockdown restrictions. In fact, he was pretty critical of many of them.
Absolutely. So this is not about Graham Brady's position on lockdown or position on whether the Prime Minister should say or go. But the reality is the crisis of public confidence was so great and is so great that the process that deals with it and the process that holds those in power to account, which right now, as Erin was saying earlier, is this secretive process that Graham Brady oversees. And we thought it was really important that the voices of the public were heard at the heart of that process. And so we invited them to send their handwritten letters about their experiences to Graham Brady's office to do so.
Briefly, Elliot, any idea how many such letters have been sent to Graham Brady?
Yeah, so we've had confirmation from 1,400 people that they definitely sent their letter, and a couple of thousand more had kind of initiated the process as well. So at least 1,400 people have had their experiences heard, and that includes people who were retiring from the NHS after 35 years of service, who weren't able to have any retirement drinks, had to just leave their office, and weren't given the kind of the work event that that Downing Street ended up having with a couple of drinks in the garden. So a range of experiences were sent into him, but about 1,400 that we know about.
Ellie Gellard of 38 Degrees, thanks for your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Gloria.
You've been watching The Briefing with me, Gloria De Piero. The show is back every weekday from noon. Up next, it's On the Money with Liam Halligan. But for now, I'll leave you with your weather forecast.
Hello again. A fairly grey Monday for the vast majority, but not much rain around. Most places dry, as they will be for most of this week. Still feeling fairly cold, especially across England and Wales. We've had high pressure in control, slipping away a little to the east, and there is a weak weather front draped across northern Scotland that will provide some rain and drizzle